All right, my name is Ben Stewart, and I am a stand up comedian out of Louisville, Kentucky. I need to practice making long form videos with minimal editing. I just need to push record, talk to the camera, and post it on YouTube. That's really what I'm doing this for is practice video making, and also just to document my life in a way where if my kids wanted to in the future, they could watch these videos and find out a little bit more about their dad, where he comes from, and why he is the way he is. Maybe I'll learn a little bit about myself, but so this is sort of a living documentary about my life as I remember it, and maybe we'll have some fun with it, do some interviews with family and friends down the road. I know I was talking about this kind of thing with my dad, and we were having some laughs, talking about some memories. So, maybe we'll do that. But yeah, let's go. And this first video is from ages 0, from the day I was born, up until when I was 4. My family moved to Jackson, Tennessee. So we're going to do ages 0 to 4, things that I remember. But my goal is to do this as quickly as possible with minimal editing, minimal turnaround time. Just sit down, talk to the camera for 20 minutes or so, and then just put it out there. Practice the process of filming myself talking and posting it, and then just moving on. It doesn't have to be perfect because, as you can see, I'm using a butter knife to hold the microphone. I am sitting on a stool in my bedroom right now, and that's just the way it's going to be. Big barrier is waiting for everything to be perfect, and I have been wanting to make longer videos for probably a couple years, and I just haven't for 2 reasons. One, I don't have a great space to film long videos. I don't have a fancy studio like you see on YouTube. Everybody's got like a great looking setup. I don't have that, and I want to have that, and it has stopped me from filming because I'm like, well, this looks bad in the background. Nobody's going to want to watch it. And I'm just going to get over it and do it anyway. The second reason is nobody wants to hear me talk about anything. Is in my head, I'm like, I'm not an expert on anything. Why would I talk about stuff? It's like, I don't know. I could talk about comedy. I could talk about books. I like reading. I like writing. Could talk about family stuff. But really, it's like, who cares? In my mind, I'm thinking nobody cares. But I don't know. Maybe my kids will care in the future. And I have 3 kids. So if that's 3 people that care about this, then that works for me. I just need to practice. And this will be a fun exercise. Kicking it off on August 2nd, 1986, which was a Saturday, by the way, my mom and dad welcomed a baby boy at 9 pounds, 15 ounces. I'm going to add in some photos so that you can see that I'm telling the truth. I was a giant child, a giant baby. If memory serves, my mom said I was 9 days over my due date, so I should have been born in July. But I was stuck. I was not coming out. And so my mom was in labor for more than 12 hours before the doctors were finally like, all right, man, we're going to have to remove this guy. He is not coming out the right way. We're going to have to extract him. And so they did. And my dad said that when I was born, they did a C-section. When they pulled me out, I had a big ring on the top of my head from pushing against trying to come out the birth canal and just not happening. My head was way too big. I was a big baby. I was a giant baby. I remember my Uncle Mike, who was my dad's brother, telling me that when they went to see me in the nursery, you go down in the hospital, and back then you could just walk by a wall of windows and peer into the nursery and look at all the newborns. My dad had this thing. He was scared of having his baby switched at the hospital. I don't know why. Apparently that was a concern back in the 80s. So I have a birthmark on my knee, and my dad was like, all right, he's got a knee mole remember the Nemo. My baby was born with a Nemo. I got to make sure I leave with that same baby. And my Uncle Mike went down to the nursery and looked through the glass and was like, hey man, I don't think you have to worry about confusing your baby with anybody else. It looks like a toddler is in there taking a nap with all the newborns. I was that big. I was a giant baby. And I think that's pretty funny. Side note, so my own kids were not that big of babies. But they were all premature. Our oldest, I think he was 6 pounds maybe. It doesn't matter. But he was so early that had he come on his like set due date, he probably would have been a giant baby also. So I don't know. He's also a giant child. He's a giant person. He's 13 years old now, and he is he weighs more than me. He's almost bigger than me in height as well. He's a giant child. Anyway, back to me, the most important part. So I was born in Louisville, Kentucky, but my family actually lived in Jeffersonville, Indiana, which is right across the bridge. The first house we lived in, my parents' house, they had like a little house on Grubbs Avenue. It's a street in Jeffersonville, and I remember my first memories were formed there. I remember there being a big tree in the backyard, and there was dirt all around it, and that's where I learned to potty train. I would go out back and I would just pee on that tree, and then I just would play in the dirt. I would just play in that dirt, and that's where I kept my buried treasure, and I had a blast. I had a good time. My first memories, I'm trying to think back. I remember my first memories were sitting on the linoleum floor in our kitchen. And I must have been 2 or 3 years old. And I just remember sitting there spinning a Harlem Globetrotters basketball. I don't know why, but that's the first memory that I have. So being 9 days overdue, my parents were talking to the doctors at the time. And the doctor's like, you need to be out, you need to be walking, you need to be up moving to speed things along to kind of get labor started, and we'll get this baby out of here. And, she probably didn't want to. She was very pregnant with a giant baby. And a funny story that they used to tell me as a kid was my dad, like, making my mom get up and walk around, and he would, like, chase her with a fly swatter. Around the house, and just the image of my dad chasing my mom with a fly swatter is very funny. But I ended up, my mom finally went into labor on the morning of August 2nd, 1986, and I remember her telling me that she was sitting on our couch watching the movie Predator on Showtime. So this would have been 86. Predator wasn't very old, might have been a new release, but that's what did it, and that's what got things moving. Apparently it was Arnold Schwarzenegger fighting an alien in the jungle is what did it. And that was the day I was born. Other notable stories from that time period, from ages 0 to 4 in my life, I think I was 2 years old, and my parents had this, my dad still has it. It is a metal fire safe. It's like a chest. And I was like trying to be strong. And so I'm like picking one side of it up and dragging it backward across the kitchen floor. So I don't remember this, but I know that it happened from the photos and, of course, all the stories. But one day I'm picking up the handle and I'm dragging it backward across the kitchen floor, and I slipped, and my feet went under the fire safe, and I dropped it down on my toe. One of my big toes just was almost cut off. It was like boom, fell down on my toes. They had to take me to the doctor, take me to the hospital, and I got my first stitches, my first big boo-boo. I was in bad shape. I had a big old sock on. My foot was wrapped up. Another funny story, I A story my mom told me one time is that like right after I was born, so I'm a giant baby, and giant babies have giant appetites. And one day, I like threw up, and my mom noticed blood in my throw up. And she freaked out. She's like, oh no, my baby's sick. Something's really wrong. And so she takes me to the hospital. Well, they do a couple tests or whatever, and they found out that I was breastfeeding so hard that I was making my mom's nipples bleed. Like I was just tearing them titties up. I was just really working on my mom. That's putting her through it. Sorry, mom, and sorry, dad. Really wore them titties out. Right after that, my mom switched to just feeding me whole milk. I don't think there was ever formula involved. I just went from breast milk to whole cow's milk. I guess my mom figured, if I am going to be the size of a baby cow, I might as well drink what they drink. And it worked, I guess. I remember our neighbors. We had two neighbors that lived on either side of us. They were two old ladies, one old lady on each side. And one of them was very sweet and liked me a lot, loved seeing me run around, and she was very kind. And then one who was just so mean and hated kids. I remember I just have vague memories of like walking out into our front yard and wandering around and knowing not to go into the grumpy old lady's yard because she would get mad. And so I don't know who those old ladies are. I'm probably not going to look it up, but I remember having two old lady neighbors. One was sweet, one was not nice. Yeah, family in my life I remember most at the time. My mom's parents also lived in Jeffersonville, and my dad's brother and his wife, my Uncle Mike and Aunt Lynetta, they lived, I believe, not in Jeffersonville, but close. I think Sellersburg. And they would come over all the time. And even looking at old photos of this time in my life, that's who is in the photos the most. They were always around. I have a lot of good memories of them. And they didn't have, Mike and Lynetta didn't have kids, so I don't have a lot of memories with my cousins at the time. My mom's brother, my other Uncle Mike, and Aunt Vanessa, they had a little girl maybe a year, 2 years after I was born. Her name is Michelle, my cousin Michelle. And as we got older, like ages 3 or 4, I started like having more memories with Michelle. And then my other cousins lived in Baltimore at this time. And so I didn't see them a lot, I don't think, from ages 0 to 4. I went to a babysitter named Janice, and I don't have a lot of memories of this. I think she had a son also who was older than me. And for some reason, I remember him doing handstands in her living room. He's a very athletic kid, apparently. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Obviously, I couldn't do those. These are just, this is what I wrote down. I don't know if any of this has any value at all. And I don't care. I'm going to make these videos, and if my kids like it, even if they don't, they can watch it and learn about their dad a little bit. I think the last notable thing from this timeline, from this time period in my life, which was 1986 to 1990, is that on March 31st, 1989, my parents did just the most unthinkable thing. They had another kid. March 31st, 1989, my little sister Hallie was born, and I don't think I was real excited about it. I'll be honest. I don't have a lot of memories of Hallie from this time. She was just like a tiny baby, but there's some home videos, and I'll try to get a clip to like add into this at some point. There is a home video where it's not long after Hallie got home from the hospital, and I was 2.5, almost like going on 3 years old. And I'm laying on the bed next to my baby sister. My mom is recording with our home video camera. And she's just like, I think she's talking like, "What do you think, Benjamin? What do you think? That's your new sister, Hallie." And then I just whack. I just like smacked her on the head for no reason at all. Just because I was, a toddler. I wasn't happy that this new thing was getting attention. and yeah, so horrible thing they did having another kid. Those are the most notable things I remember from that time period. There was another thing, I think it was for my third birthday, maybe my fourth birthday, I'll have to double check, but one of my birthdays I got a red Jeep, Power Wheels, and our yard wasn't very big. And I remember my mom and dad taking us out to my mom's like extended family. They had a farm in Kentucky somewhere, and bringing that red Power Wheels Jeep out there. In my memory, I'm going 100 miles an hour, through like fields and across big driveways out in the country. And, I'm sure there's some home videos out there of me just like putting along, but I put some miles on that thing. I think by the time they got rid of it after a couple years of use, the plastic tires on it were bald and chewed through. I mean, I put miles on that thing. They probably had to replace the battery. So that is most of my memories. That's everything I can remember really off the top of my head from ages 0 to 4. At the time, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. She was also cutting hair. So my mom graduated high school and went to beauty school to learn how to cut hair. And she had me. I came along. My mom was 22 years old. So pretty young. Like if you think back, that's young. That's 20. She'd only been allowed to legally go to a bar for a year when I came along. So very young, but that's just, I think that's pretty typical for that generation is having kids pretty young. My dad worked for a freezer company called Bear. And when I was 4 years old, that is why we moved. It was my dad's job that relocated us to Jackson, Tennessee. It must have been, fall of 90 or possibly early 91. My family of 4 now, because they, for some reason, wanted another kid, and they picked up and moved us to Jackson, Tennessee. And so, yeah. Part 2 of this series is going to be Jackson, Tennessee, the years there, because we were only there for 2 years, but I've got a lot of memories. That's it for this one. I don't know how many of these I'm going to do. As of recording this, today is February 2nd, 2026, and I am 39 years old. So I'm going to break up my entire life until like now in chunks where it makes sense. And so this first video is my first 4 years on Earth, my first 4 years of being alive and things I remember. I'm going to put up some pictures. I'm going to try to make a video that's longer than 90 seconds, which is what I typically make for Instagram or YouTube Shorts. I'm going to practice talking to the camera and try to have a little fun, making the videos. I want these to be entertaining in some way, maybe people can look back on this one day and be like, oh, well, this was his life. And I'll try to get into every detail. It's just first video. I don't remember a lot. I was a baby. I was a baby to 4 years old. Don't remember doing much. Yeah, that is it for part one of my life documented. And I'm going to see you in the next one. Take care.